always wondered what Excel is about, what you can do with it, and maybe have a quick introduction to it? Well, this course will introduce you to Excel, but also will give you a very practical exercise in the end that you can implement today. And if I manage to convince you, then you can join me maybe in my next classes where I go deeper into Excel and we can build together some incredible templates. I've been using Excel for over 30 years on a personal level and also at work. I've seen firsthand how it can save time, improve efficiency, and also unlock some valuable insight from the data that you have. And I don't think you need to know all the functionality of Excel to get great results. Whether you're a student, a professional, or anyone who wants to get more out of their data, this course is for you. So we'll start with the basics, like navigating the interface and entering data. Then we'll move on to essential skills, like using basic formula and formatting for clarity. So to put your new skills to practice, we'll work on a practical project where you'll build a useful tool and a simple budget calculator. Let's take it from the very beginning. When we click on the Excel icon, the first thing we see is a good morning or a good afternoon from Excel. And you have the choice to either reopen one recent file or you can create a new file. So we'll be creating a new file here. We'll be starting from scratch as well. Now there's a lot of information here, but I think the first thing that we need to do is to save the file that we have created here. So this way you can keep it. So you go on the top left and you press File and you have this Microsoft type of menu here, and then you save it somewhere safe on your computer. Now let's have a quick overview of our workspace. On top of the screen there is what is called the ribbon. So this is a primary user interface for Excel. So it has tabs, and under those tabs you have groups. We'll go through these tabs later on. The formula bar, so that's a thing just under here. So this is where when you type something on a worksheet, it will show here as well. So it's another way to have a look at what we are doing in a way. Now the worksheet area, this is all this. This is made up of cells. This is the working area. You can input and edit data in this. The status bar. So this status bar shows you some information about the current state of Excel, just there. Now the quick access toolbar up there is quite handy. It's customizable and you can pin functionality that you use quite often. So you could just go there and access them from there instead of having to go through the menus. Now let's have a look at our main workspace. A workspace is made out of cells. So a cell is an entity here. When you double click, you can input data into it, like numbers, but you can also input text. So each cell has a reference. So you have the column letter and you have the row number. So for instance, this cell here is a cell E7, and it's also showing at the top left there. This cell referencing is very important because this is the main power of Excel. You can then reference a cell. For instance, you can go to another cell and you can input equal that cell there. And therefore, that would copy the data from the first cell to that cell. And if you change the first cell, then this other cell will change as well. One way to do it is to type the reference directly, equal, and you tap the reference. Another way is that you just can use the mouse directly. So you just type equal, and with the mouse you go and you position yourself and you click on top of the cell that you want to reference. Now instead of referencing a cell, if you just copy a cell, a good old Control-C, if I do a Control-C here and I do a Control-V here, which means copy and paste, in this instance there is no link from the initial cell. If you change the value of the first cell, it will change in the one that you have referenced, but it will not change in the other one because I've only copied the value. This referencing is very important for Excel because for me, Excel is all about the power of combining the referencing and the power of calculation, the power of its brain. And I think this is actually genius. I don't know I think we probably know who came up with this idea, but this is absolutely genius. And you can do so much with Excel, and this is why I'm using it on a daily basis. And sometimes I buy software to do something, and then I realize at some point, oh, I'm going to have to use Excel again to finish it because it's customizable. It's really at your fingertips. You can do so much with Excel. I just love it. And by the way, I'm not working for Microsoft, and they don't really need me to promote their product, so I have no affiliation. Now, the second component of Excel that I mentioned just now that is also critical to Excel is the calculation. You can obviously add numbers, you can subtract numbers, and you can use what is called functions, and they can be extremely powerful, and you can combine the value of several cells, and you can run functions on top of all those cells, and that will give you incredible results. So this is, for me, the combination of referencing and calculating. This is really the power of Excel. So for instance, just to give you a very brief example here, if I just press equal and the value of this cell, and then I just press plus and the value of the other cell, it will do a calculation. So this is using the referencing to those two cells, and then it's using the calculation power of Excel. So just those two together are very powerful. Something else that we can do on this is we talked about copy. Obviously, we can copy one cell, but we can also copy a group of cells this way. And we select it we drag, and with a mouse we select, and after we press Ctrl C for copy, and then we can press Ctrl V for paste, and we have copied and pasted a group of cells this time. Something else we can do is we can insert a row, press insert, and then we input a row, and we can do the same with the column. So we press the letter at the top, right click, insert, and we have inserted. The final thing that you can do, just very briefly, is when you type some text, for instance, that is too long, you can very easily extend the size of that cell just by going with your mouse between the two columns, and then you extend it this way, or between the two rows where you have this symbol here, and then you make it bigger this way. Excel files, Excel workbooks, Excel worksheets, and cells. An Excel file is a workbook. It's the same thing. Now, within this workbook, you have worksheets. And within each worksheet, you have cells. You have a grid made of cells. So when you first open Excel, you only have one worksheet here. But then you can operate new ones by pressing this plus button here at the bottom. And then I am working with two worksheets. So I can have data on the first worksheet, and I can have another set of data independently on the other sheets. You can actually also reference cells from the first sheet into the second sheet. And it is useful because you can have different type of information. And by renaming the sheet here, you have sheet 1 and sheet 2 here, but you can give a more useful name. And then that will allow users to navigate through your workbook in a very user-friendly way. Now let's have a look at this ribbon here. The file one, this is a typical Microsoft one. So with this you can save the file, you can print, you can share also, you can export into PDF, for instance, you can publish it. But more importantly, and I don't know why they've put that at the bottom, you have at the very bottom here, you have the options. You have options, and this is where you can go and change various types of default value that Microsoft Excel has. So you should be familiar with this if you're familiar with Microsoft. If not, have a play with this. It's quite intuitive. The second tab is a Home tab. So this is the tab with the most frequently used comments in a way. So this is where you can format your cells. You can do the copy and paste as we've seen. You can do all your alignment and style. And so this is where you would spend most of your time. The Insert tab. So this is where you insert components into your worksheet. You can insert some tables, some illustrations, some pictures, as we'll see, some icons, but you can also insert charts. So that to create chart, you need to go through this tab, and it's extremely useful. And then you can add some text boxes, have a play, have a look around. So the page layout. So this is to review your layout for printing, but also for viewing. For instance, you can remove the grids from here. Formula, this is where you have not only all the formula presented in a more user-friendly way, but this is also where you can test your formulas when you feel they don't work properly. The data, so this is a little bit more advanced. This is where you can import, export data, and this is where you can manipulate the data with Excel. Review allows you to collaborate, but also you can do some very basic proofing with it. The View tab is a tab where you can change the way your worksheet looks like. As optional, you can have a developer tab, but I don't think you would have it by default. I just have it because I'm doing some Visual Basic. So if you see that under your worksheet, I mean that someone's been writing macros and doing some Visual Basic. And finally, you have the help. Now in this video, we're going to start the exciting stuff. We're going to start working with formulas and functions. So first of all, a definition. A function is provided to us by Excel to help us write formulas. A formula usually needs a function. There are exceptions, like for instance, with the one we did last time, A plus B equals C. We're not really using any functions. Now, if we go back to this tab, there is a function library here. So that's all the functions that we have. I think there's around 400 functions that Excel has. So it's a little bit overwhelming. But once we know how to use one and we know how to find the others, it gets all downhill. It gets all very easy. So as usual, I'd like to start with an example. So let's say that we want to write a budget, a monthly budget for our home. So we write a few items here. So we had food, car, clothes, and just utilities. So just to give you an idea. So and then we input the value for the month. Monthly cost, say, so we have food, let's say we have 500, car 200, clothes 200, and utilities we have 100. So what we want to do is we want to calculate the total monthly expense. So we are on monthly here. So I use this to make the cell a little bit wider. So in order to do this, there are three ways. We are mostly interested in the last way, but I just wanted to show you the other way, so there's a bit of a nice follow-up on our previous video. So the first way is just to add them one by one, like we did. So we put the equal, and then we go there, and then we put plus, and then we go to the second one, and we put plus, and when we go to the third one, and we put plus, etc. And then when we reach the last one, we press enter. So that gives us the total. So this is one method. It's a little bit tedious because in general, the numbers that we want to add in Excel are contiguous. It'd be nice if we had a way to group all this, but we'll see that later on. So the second method is to use the function. Actually, the two last methods will be to use a function, but we will be using it differently, if you like. The function name is sum. So here I write equal, I write the function name, and then I open the brackets, because usually when we have a function, we have to give it some parameters. So here, Excel is asking me, what do you want to add? What do you want to sum? And then what we can do is we can go with our mouse or with our cursor. We go to the first one, and then it looks like it wants us to put a comma after each number. And then put a comma, we put the second one, put a comma, we put the third one, we put a comma, and we put the last one. And after, it looks like it wants us to close the bracket. So let's just close the brackets. And then what do? I press enter. Oh, it's good. We have the same result. We have performed our first formula using Excel function. So here, this is the formula tab that I mentioned in the presentation. Your formula is here, but when you double click on this, you can also see it here with a nice color coded to tell you which one you are adding. So something to know about formulas is, as they are represented here, You can go here and type things directly into this small window here. But what's more interesting is you can go to this symbol here and you click on it, and all the arguments of the function are showing very nicely here. And when I click on the last one, he is asking me, do you have another number that you would like to add? If you click on that field here, then you can go back and say, I want to have this one as well. I'll be removing this one. So it's usually very useful to click on this symbol here. That gives you a better view of the function that you're using. I talked very briefly of the help tab here last time. But what I found the most useful in a help function is, let's say you are working with this function here and you're not really sure how it works. It gives you an example to start with, so that's very useful. It gives you a little summary. It gives you some text here. But also, if you click help on this function here, it takes you to a Microsoft website that is dedicated to this function. So that is very useful. So I have it coming up now. It can be quite useful, and this looks like that. Okay, so we have done the first using +++, this one using our first function. But as the cells here are contiguous, there is a faster way to do it. Before I get started, I need to give you a bit of a definition of an Excel range. A range is a group of cells that is more or less contiguous, so that will always look like a rectangle or a square. Like for instance, this is a range because those cells are contiguous. But say if I had some other numbers here, I could call this a range as well. So there's 2 dimensions to that range here. I'm going to keep to this range here. So this is the range. And what you can do with functions, you can use ranges instead of using individual cells. So for instance, here I can say I want to do the sum. Open the bracket. And after with my mouse, I go to the first item that I want to add. And I drag it down up until the last item that I want to add. And then I close the bracket and it's done. So this is the way you use functions. Usually you have ranges. Either you pick up one individual cell, group of cells, or you pick up a range. I would like to show you another function, and then we can have a look at formatting, because surely we can have that look a little bit better. The other function that I would like to show you, it's like a logical function. It's an if function that is well known from developers over there. So let's say that I want to calculate, let's say you are splitting the monthly cost with someone else, but not all of them. So here you would say share the cost. And the food, yes, you split it, let's say, but the car, you don't split it because let's say you're the only one using the car. The clothes, you don't split it because you buy your own clothes. And the utilities, yes, you are splitting it. So I'm just going to, just force of habit, I just need to see things in the center. We'll see how we do that later on. And let's say that I want to calculate then cost per person. So what we have here, as we are sharing the cost of food, we would like to divide this per 2. So the food, let's say, and I put equal, and now the function is called if. You open the bracket, and then instead of pressing this, I'm just going to access the cells directly. So if this field, and I click on it with the mouse, is equal to yes, then I divide this number by 2. So if the cost is shared, then I just need to pay half of this because we are splitting the cost. And therefore, I calculate half only. I put another comma, which means it means the opposite. If the shared cost is not yes, then I leave this field here. I leave F6. So let's have a look. If the shared cost is yes, I divide per 2. And if it's false, then I leave it as is. So here, in this case, I divide per 2. So if I copy that cell and I paste it here, I paste it here, and I paste it here. And now let's have a look if it worked. So car, I said the shed is not cost, so it keeps the same amount. It keeps F7. Then also keeps F8, and then it does divide per 2 because it's shared cost. So if I do the total here, so what I can do is I can copy that field here and I can paste it here. The reason why I can do this is that when you copy this cell here, look here, it's FFF, which is that column here, it follows. And here it replaces everything automatically with H. So there are ways that you can keep calculating that column. But for the time being, we'll just assume that it will follow the column as you move the cell. So 1000 here, it's down to 700. And obviously, you can do the same with this function and this function. But actually, I'm going to copy both at the same time, and I'm just going to put them here. So what I suggest we do now, we remove those two here, because this was just to show you as a link with our previous video. So if I copy those fields here, and I paste them here because I want to have them neatly under, it gives me 0. Why? Because here I was adding 6 to 9. I was adding 6 to 9. But now I'm adding 2 to 5. 2 to 5. And that's because I copied and paste. And when I copy and paste, it moves the row with. So instead, I just need to cut. If I cut and I paste, it keeps the same numbers here, 6 to 9, 6 to 9. All right. So this is it. So we've already learned two functions. One with the sum, which is a calculation, math function. I think you will find it around math maybe. Sum, yes, math. The math function will be under math and trig here, sum. And then the logical function, which is if, which you will find here. So that's it. So next step is to format this a little bit, to make it look a little bit better. Now let's see how we can format this table here. The first thing I want to do is to hide those light grids that are here by default, so this will be more obvious when I apply changes. We have the font group here that we'll be using. We have the alignment group, and we also have the number group, and then we have the styles. So if we start with font, I think font itself is quite intuitive. You know, if you use Microsoft Word, you should be aware of what that does. So obviously you can come here, you can change the font. And then you can change the size. You can change the size just by clicking here, it goes up, clicking here, it goes down, the bold, italic, all that you know. And obviously the font color itself. Now what is specific to Excel, as we are dealing with cells, with rectangles or squares and the like, so we can do two things. The first thing we can do is to change the background of the cell, and the second thing is you can change the borders of that cell. Now if we look at the background color, so those are all the colors that you can add to the background of the cell. So for instance, if I put this here, the cell background becomes that color. So that's pretty simple and intuitive to understand. Microsoft has put neatly all the color shades here. So one of the things you can do is you can apply a strong color to the headings, and in the same color scheme you apply a lighter one. And to make it clear, what you can do is obviously change the font of this to white. So this is just an option, I suppose. Now I'm going to remove this. If you think you don't have enough colors, you can still go here at more colors, and then you have an array here. You can input a hex value if you like, or if you prefer the RGB, you can put it here, and here the same, you can slide to have dark or clear. A little bit less overwhelming is this part here where you only have a finite amount of colors, and they're all showing that, so it's quite handy. So this is what you can do, And after, say, you want to have this one the same as the heading, you can go there, you can put the dark, and then you can put the white here, the white font. So that's one way to do it. So that's for the background of cells, quite intuitive. Now the borders of the cell. Here there is absolutely no borders to those cells, but if I go onto one cell here, for instance, and I just click by the default value, for instance, so that will put an underline on the cell. If I don't like the default value, I can change it. I can say, okay, I just want to have the right-hand side of the cell showing. And then I click here and it's showing it here. And then you have all those possibilities. You have the thick ones here, you have the double here, for instance. And then that's pretty much it for the top part. Now, if we look at the bottom part, it gives you also, Excel gives you also the possibility to draw your own border. So that's, if you're very handy with a mouse, that could be good, but I don't find that extremely useful. It's a bit of gimmicky, if you ask me. And then you can go back and you can erase it. Whoops. Draw borders to be used with caution. Try it. See if you like it. You might like it more than me. But what's interesting is the more borders part here. So this is where you can really, let me put back a black type of color here. This is where you can decide, especially when you select a large amount of cells, you can decide all the style here, the outline, and then you can just specifically build your own design here. So that's something that is quite useful. Very good. So this is for the font group here. Now the alignment is also quite intuitive. That allows you to put the content of a cell either on the right hand side, on the left hand side, on the top or on the bottom. Something else that can be useful for very large tables is you can put the text like this, so that will allow you to put your cells closer. We've seen that before, but you can extend the size of the cell. For instance, I think everything is too squashed here, so I'm just selecting a few cells and I'm just opening up like this. As we are discussing groups of cells, obviously, if you select a group, you can change the border for all the group. Like for instance, you go here, just go back, and I say all borders, and that will give me borders for all the cells using the previous color I had. So this is another option. So this is to indent. This is to wrap text. Let's say I don't have enough room here. The first option, as mentioned before, is just we can increase the size of the cell. But the other option is, if you don't want to change the size of the cell, that will wrap around the text like this. If I remove this, it just puts it back on top. That will wrap the text. So once again, to be used with caution, I put everything back on top. I like to have things in the middle. I just select everything. I put everything back in the middle here. Now, what is quite interesting is the number group here, to format numbers here. So there are some quick access at the bottom here, like the dollar percentage. But here, for instance, I know that those are dollars, so I just click on the dollar here. And it formats it automatically. I can just click on this and just decide on a different currency. If there were percentage, I could just press the percentage. This would give me a comma, a pure number, and this is quite good. This allows you to decide on the amount of the decimals that your number will have. So let's say I don't want to muck around with decimals. I'm just going to remove them, and this way. And here I'm going to do the same. I put in dollars and I remove the decimals. Now, other things that you can do if you want more detail, or if you don't have dollars, you can just, let's say I'm just going to click here. You can click on general here, and that will give you a few other things. The currency, just a number, the date and time, we'll see that, a fraction, and a pure text. So, or the general, which is no specific format. So here I'm just going to put everything in dollars, that in dollars. Now I just want to give you a bit of a tip here that I don't see people using often, is the format painter here. So this is extremely useful. Let's say I have another line here. Total 500. I'm using it all the time. So if you want to say have the same format as this one, what you do is you click on the cell that you want to take the format from. You go Format Painter, and they give you a little brush like this, and you go back to the number that you want to convert to that format. It's beautiful. You do the same here. You go back here. And you can do even better. What you can do is you click on the one that you want to take the format from, and you double click here, and after you can go everywhere and just apply it to several different spots. So let me unclick that and remove those. This is quite good. I suggest that you really use it. It's a good time saver. So now we've seen this. I just wanted to demo the date. Let's say 1st of September on my side of the world. For you, it might be more 9/1, but this is 1st of September here. I'm just going to put a different format for this. If I look at the dates, I could have the long date here. And now this is not large enough, so I double click here and it gives me this. And I want to go back to the short format, it's here. Now, if you want to go even deeper in formatting, you can click at the bottom here, where it gives you more format number. Or what you can do is you can right click here and go at Format Cells, and under the number you have it here. Actually, while we are not Format Cells, you can do all the things that we've seen on top. You can do it from right clicking here, and we can see the borders that we've done before. We can see the field that we've done before. But if I go back here on the number, this is where you have additional ways to format your numbers. As you can see, there's quite a lot. Like for instance, my date here. If I want to show the month instead, like this, and it shows me a sample here. So the date would look like this. If I want to back to the full on, it would show like this. If I want to have halfway through, it would show me like this. If you want to have the months spelled out and just the number for the day and the year. The currencies, we've seen that. You can also create custom one, but we'll see that at a later stage. I don't want to overwhelm you at this stage. So this is, oops. So I've taken the wrong format here. So I just go back here and I put my first. Actually, I'm going to put the long one so everybody understands what I'm referring to here. So that's it for the number part. So conditional formatting and format as a table, I'm going to keep this for a separate video because conditional formatting is very exciting, and this plays also a big role in your Excel looking professional and easy to read. So I'm going to keep those two for later on. Here they just have some style, which is a quick way, instead of having to go through the standard font group here. You come here and that gives you some predefined formatting. So for instance, the date, if I want to have it in green, press on this and it shows here. If I wanted to have it in this font, I would press here. And here you have all the accent that we have seen before. So this is another way to format the cell, but most of the time we just quickly use those two here, those three for the borders if you want. The borders are to be black usually, otherwise it looks a bit gimmicky, but it depends, or white also. So what I need to do here, I need to go back to more borders, and I need to put the color black or automatic, which is a default color. And here it shows me how it is now. And I want to do around it, and I want to do the inside. So now that puts it back in all black. And I don't really like this either. Sorry, Excel, I don't want to use your own styles. I want to use mine. So I'm just going to put something like this. Or could I go one level darker and put it back in the center? No, it's still not that. Still need to find another color. Maybe that will do. And then what I do is I drag this to get rid of this. So now this is starting to look a little bit better, a little bit more inviting. Well, depending on if you like the colors or not, obviously. But what we can do is just to quickly change, put that into maybe a blue like this to be consistent, this in a lighter blue. Now, one last thing. We talked about the format painter here. There is another way to do this, to be thorough. What you can do is, and actually that will introduce us to the different types of copy and paste, is you can copy the cell that you're interested in copying the format from. You copy it with Ctrl+C, and then you go where you want to apply the formatting, and you right-click and you look at paste options, paste special, which is hard to say. And one of those, if we ignore the others for the time being, is you can just do the formatting here. I'm not going to paste the value, I'm just going to paste the formatting. Something that can be quite useful when you're dealing with a large amount of cells. Okay, so that closes this video here. Let's start with some very basic functions. The first one is the sum. So the sum, very straightforward. What you need to do, you tap sum and then you select the data that you want to sum, press enter, gives you the total. Same for average. Select the data, gives you the average. Min will give you the smallest value in that list, and max will give you the highest value. A tip is that you can, instead of having to select the data every time, you can give a name to that list. For instance, sales, and after, instead of selecting the data, you can just write sum sales, average sales, mean sales, and max sales. And then you can go to formula, name manager, and you should be able to see your name here. Another tip is that the numbers don't have to be continuous. You can do sum, press Control, and select few fields, and that should give you the sum of those fields only. Concatenate is used to concatenate fields, but not only fields but also values that you could input directly. For instance, you could have concatenate dir hard-coded, C5, blank, and D5. The len function gives you the length of the text. So for instance here the length is 5. Left brings back the left component of the text, but would only bring back the number of characters that you specify in the second field. So here I have left, C5, bring back only 2. Right is the same thing, but on the other side of the field. Right field, how many you want to bring back. There is a newer version of concatenate. It occurred only from Excel 2019 and above. It's called concat. The main advantage is you can concatenate a full range of fields directly. You cannot do that with concatenate itself. Another tip is to use the symbol and, %. So you just put the name of the field, symbol, and another field, and that will concatenate as well. So it's a little bit simpler. Let's move on to some logical function. If makes a test and puts one value or another based on the outcome of that test. For instance, here I am testing if the value of the sales is greater than 2000, and if it is, I put yes, and if it is not, I put no. If I drag that down, and it can be used with if to provide more than one condition. For instance, if a person is a graduate and the sales is greater than 2000, then I put yes, or else I put no. Or is exclusive. For instance, if the sales is smaller than 2000 or greater than 5000, I put yes. If not, I put no. Some date functions. The most common one is today. So you just put today, empty brackets, and gives you today's date. So here I am in Australia at the moment, so I have the Australian format with day, month, and year. But you can change all these, obviously. Now we'll give you the date and the time. Just put now, empty brackets, give you this. The date function calculates a date based on days, month, year, if you are from this part of the world. Otherwise, it's just a matter of using the format that you have, and it will take a day, a month, and a year, and it will come up with a proper date. Date diff, as its name implies, calculates the difference between two dates. So you would have one date, and a second date, and then you can calculate the difference either in day, month, year. You just need to put the proper hard-coded parameter at the end, D for days, M for month, Y for years. Now a tip on dates is if you don't want to have date plus time, you just go under format number and you just specify time, and that gives you just the time, and then you can have date and time in different fields. That's it for dates. So VLOOKUP is looking for a value in a vertical array and is bringing back a relative value. For instance, here I have the function VLOOKUP that is looking for John into this array of data. And the 2 that I have here, that means that I want to bring back values from the second column when I find this John. And false means that I want to find the exact value. I mean, true would mean the approximate value, which only makes sense when you're looking for numbers, really. But it's not recommended. I would use false all the time as a parameter. So it looks from left to right only. That's something that is good to know. And it looks for the value in the first column. Another example is I could be looking for the same value John, but I would bring this time the value of the third column, and that would give me 4,000 here. Index is used to retrieve a value in a given row and in a given column in an array of data. For instance, in this array of data here, I retrieve the 5th row in a second column, and that gives me Garcia here. So you're giving the coordinates of one point and it would bring it back. Match is a little bit similar. You're looking for a value as well, but it would tell you which row was containing this value. So this is used in function usually with other functions. For instance, match and index are often used together. I mentioned that VLOOKUP is used to look for a value vertically. HLOOKUP is the corresponding function, but for looking for a value in horizontally. For instance, if I look for April day and I wanted to bring me back the second row, I would input this function. Count is counting how many numerical values there is in an array of data. For instance, if I count this column here, it will bring 12 only. It would count all the numbers, it would also count 0, but it will not count the text, and it will not count the empty cells. Count is very similar, but the only difference is it also includes non-numerical fields to its total. For instance, here it counts as well the 2 text fields in its total. Those functions are very useful when you want to know how many rows there are in an array. For instance, here if I want to know how many employees, I would just do count A, and then that would give me 10 employees. COUNTIF tells you how many fields there are that meet a specific criteria. Might be easier to understand with an example. So here, for instance, I'm counting in that column how many graduates there are, which means how many of those fields have yes as a value. SUMIF is the same, but we need another component. We need to tell them which field they need to add. So we do the check in one field, and then we sum the value of another field. That, for instance, here, I'm looking in a graduate column to check how many have yes, and then if they are yes, I add all the sales values. Bearing in mind that you could do it with the same column. You could check, for instance, are the sales greater than 1200, and if they are, then just add those. Now COUNTIFs has replaced COUNTIF in 2007. So that allows you, as before, just to add several conditions. For instance, here you could just count how many graduates we have, by doing this, and then by adding this, we would also count how many of those have had a sale greater than 1,000. So we're checking data on the two fields, and we just give you a total day. Same ifs, the same. We just check one criteria and then do a test on two columns, for instance. So here the same here, he would do the same thing. He would calculate the total for all the graduates that have sold more than $1,000. There is another function that's called average, does the same thing, average if and average ifs, but instead of counting or putting the sum, it just calculates the average. Welcome to this quick tutorial on charts. So there's basically two types of charts that we want to do. On the high level, the first type is to compare data that have no relationship between them, but we just want to compare the values. And the second type of chart is comparing value that have a relationship, and we want to see a trend. We want to see how they change over time. So for this first category, the chart comparison type, where data has no obvious relationship between them, our starting point is we need to have the data, obviously, but we also need to have a meaning of that data. So if you select all the data, insert, and then you could do this type of chart here, the column chart. But this doesn't show you exactly what to do. This just brings back a default type of data. So what we want to do instead is we want to go to insert, and we go to recommended charts, and after we click on all charts here. In a standard clustered column, there are two types, and if we select the first one, we notice that every row of data has the name of the data here, and there's put the title at the top, but they all look the same color. So if instead we go back here, we reselect the data, we could say insert, recommended chart, and we go to all charts, and we select the second type, we notice that they have actually changed the chart. Now if we click on the data, it only takes it row by row, so each column is a different row of data. So for that reason, it's put everything into a different color. It just shows the name at the bottom, it just shows it here. So if you want to add the value itself, you have to do it one by one. But on this one, if you want to add the value, you just right click and you put add label, and you would put the value at the top. Another way to compare data is to use this type of donut, or the pie chart, or the donut chart. So I'm just going to do one. If I do the 2D pie chart here, same thing. So it just shows everything. This time it grabbed everything and it puts each element in a different color, and then you can add the label if you like, and you can do different types of formatting. So this is for a quick overview of the data with no relationship. The other type of chart that we would like to do is when the data is similar. For instance, it could be your food cost for each month, and you would want to see the trend, if you spend more, if you spend less. You just select the data this way, insert, but for these types of chart, you're better off using the lines. So you use this type of lines here, and then that would show you the trend. At the bottom, you have the month here. Now, if I delete this, and instead I want to also compare the transportation costs, in this case, I just select everything, and I do the same thing here. So I just go to the line, and I add the line here. So this is it. So this way you can see clearly the difference between those two there. Another way of doing it is to select instead the chart here with the markers here. So it's very similar, but it's a bit more precise. It shows you where the value is. So as before, if you want to show the data, you just right click on the chart, and you add a data label. And obviously you can add much more things, but this is just for a quick overview. Another way that you can do this is, if in this instance I take only one, you can select an area chart. So you have the 2D area here, for instance. That's also a good way to show you the trend. Now, if you select the two types of data, then it can become a little bit messy because when there is one that is after the other, then you don't really see what happened before. Another option is to select the area, but you have them on top of each other. So this is not always extremely useful, but that's another option for you. So this is it for a quick tutorial on chart. There's obviously plenty of other types of charts, but it can be a bit overwhelming. The best way to learn about chart is to go here and try them out. Let's review conditional formatting. I believe if you can apply all these types of conditional formatting, you won't be far to be able to format anything. So here I have some tasks, and I have a percentage completion. So one of the best way to format this is to use the color scale. So you select all those, you go under conditional formatting, color scale, and if you take the first one, you'll have the red showing the lowest value and green showing the strongest value. The challenge with this is if I put 50% here, for instance, 50% is now the highest value and it shows it in strong green. So it might be what you want. But for this, I'm not really happy because I want 100% to be the highest. So 100% should be in strong green. So what we need to do is we need to select back. We need to go under Manage Rule. And here we edit the rule. And as the lowest value, here we put a number and we say 0 will be my lowest value. And the highest value will be a number as well. And I will put 1 being 100%. So now if I do this, it shows me all the colors a bit more blend. And it's only if I put 100% that it will show it at green. And if I put 0, it will show it at 0. So this is better. Another way to format is to show bars. So it's a Gantt type. You select all your data, you go under conditional formatting, and you use data bars. And here, it shows you a longest bar for the longest percentage. Now we have the same problem. I don't want 60% to be shown as fully completed because I want 100%. So same thing, you go back here, you just manage the rule, you edit the rule, and then you do the same thing. You have a minimum and you want to say my minimum is 0 and my maximum number is 1. And you apply. Another way is to select the tasks that are above average. So you just select everything. You go under conditional formatting. You go top and bottom value and you select above average. And above average, you want to put them in green. And it shows you a pre-selection of colors. If you take green, for instance, works out this way. Now you can select the cells and just apply a default value for the others. Another way is to use the icons. So the icons also, it's very easy. You go under conditional formatting, icon set, and here you can select a set of icons, as the name implies. Now you might not want to see the percentage itself. So in this case, it's easy. You just manage the rules and you edit the rule and you say show icon only. And it will not show you the number. So this is a good quick way, and obviously you can use all types of icon. For instance, I can use, you might like this one. So there's either 4 or 5. Some that can be useful is the flag only. So if you don't want to show this, you can just say that you don't want the icon, or you can just apply the white font to it. The other way is to do the hard coding yourself. In other words, you have a look at the cell value, conditional formatting, new rule, and format only cells that contain, for instance, and here you can say equal, between, less than. So here, for instance, I say greater than 0.5, which is 50%. And here I want to have, let's say, green, something green. Now, what I want to do instead is, instead of hard coding the 50%, if you want to use the 50% from another field instead, you select it all, conditional formatting, new rule, format only cell that contains, and here you put, for instance, greater than, and instead of putting the percentage here, you just refer to this field here. So here I'm just going to do green again. That's it. And now if I change this, if I say 80%, those two disappear. So that's another way to do it. If I put 10%, almost everything is done. So now we have a look at conditional formatting based on another field. So now instead of formatting this, I want to format this. So how do we do this? Same thing, we select everything. Oh, actually for this time I'm going to do it differently. I'm just going to select this field here. I'm going to show you how it works. So a new rule, and use a formula to determine which cells to format. So in this case, I'm just going to click on this, and the formula that I'm going to use is the field here, and I click on the field is greater than 50%. I'm just going to put 0.5, it's easier for me to explain, and then I put format, and I'm just going to put this green again. So here it does nothing, and if I do 60 here, it formats this field. Now, if I copy the format from this, so you can use the format painter for conditional formatting as well. If I copy this across, it shows everything green, and if I just put 40% here, it just shows nothing green. And the reason is because it's always referring to the same field. So therefore, when we have 60%, all the other fields refer to the 60%. Instead, each field should be referring to the cell on its right. So if I just select everything now, go into conditional formatting, I manage the rules, and here I can see that there is the $2 here. So if I remove $1 here, it will take each individual field this way. Now something that you can do is once you format one and it's formatted, you go into manage a rule. Here you select the range to which you want to apply that formatting instead. So you can just play around with one, and then you can apply it to a greater range here. Now the last scenario is multiple criteria, which is something in a way that we have done here. But here I want to use the AND function this time. So here I want to turn on and off the conditional formatting, and I also have a threshold. So I'm just going to select those fields, conditional formatting, a new rule. I'm just going to use the formula as well. And this time I'm going to have an AND. So the first AND will be the value without the dollar, so removing it this way, to be greater than this. And the second criteria will be that this value here is equal to yes. Then I will be doing my formatting. Let's see if it works. So 50% and yes. Now if I put no, it stops the formatting. If I put yes and I put 70%, you only formats this one, so it works. So here you have a good summary, have a play with it, and I'm sure you can have your favorite way to do the conditional formatting yourself.